Tonight we leave the gentle drip of your modern sprinkler system and the hum of garden hoses coiled in the shed. We are traveling far from that convenience, to a place where water is not a given, but a god, a king, and a tyrant all at once. The air you breathe now is different. It's thick, carrying not the scent of freshly cut grass, but a perfume of sun-baked earth, animal dung, and distant, muddy river. The light is a heavy, golden syrup, pouring over a landscape that seems to stretch into a flat, tawny infinity under a sky so vast it feels like a physical weight. This is the Assyrian Empire at its zenith, and you are standing on the sun-bleached outskirts of its staggering capital, Nineveh. The great ziggurats and palaces are imposing silhouettes in the distance, but your world is here, in this assigned patch of dust at the edge of the irrigation canal. Your title is not grand. You are a gardener. And the task before you is brutally simple, yet impossibly complex. You must make trees live here. You are about to learn that every drop of water your charges will drink must first pass through your aching hands and your weary back. It's a life of quiet, monumental toil. A word of warning, you probably won't last a week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The day is ending, but your real work is just beginning. The inferno of the afternoon sun is finally retreating, but the ground beneath your worn leather sandals still radiates heat like a giant clay oven. You can feel it through the soles. This is the time when shadows stretch long and the light turns merciful. You stand at the edge of a main irrigation canal, a man-made river of sluggish, brownish water that is the absolute lifeblood of this entire operation. It smells of mud, of rot, of life, and of stagnation all at once. This canal didn't just appear. It is the result of conscripted labor on a scale you can barely comprehend, ordered by a king whose face you will never see but whose will is as present as the sun. That is the first, widely accepted historical fact that frames your entire existence. The Assyrian Empire was a master of hydraulic engineering, creating extensive networks of canals, aqueducts, and water systems to sustain its cities and agriculture. Your tiny plot of land is but a single, insignificant capillary at the very end of that vast, imperial circulatory system. You look down at your hands. They are already calloused, stained with dirt and old resin. You're not a slave, not exactly. You're more like a tenant farmer with a very specific, very damp skill set. You answer to an overseer who answers to a scribe who answers to a steward who might, on a very good day, catch the distant attention of a palace eunuch. Your survival, and the survival of the 10 young saplings trembling in their carefully dug holes behind you, depends entirely on what you do in these cooler hours. The saplings are fig trees. Their leaves look pathetic, already coated with a fine layer of the omnipresent dust, making them appear gray and ghostly rather than green and vibrant. They are spaced in a strict, orderly line. This isn't haphazard. It's geometry dictated by thirst. Each tree is precisely positioned so that when you finally manage to get water to them, it will soak the root ball efficiently without wasting a precious drop on bare ground. The spacing is a silent lesson in rationing, a word you don't know yet but will soon feel in your bones. A fly buzzes persistently near your ear. You swat it away, your movement slow with a fatigue that is more mental than physical, the fatigue of anticipation. You have your tools. A heavy, porous clay pot with a rounded belly and a narrow neck, sitting on the ground like a patient, pot-bellied companion. A length of frayed rope. And looming over the canal bank, a skeletal structure of weathered timber, your shadaf. It's just a forked pole, a horizontal beam, a counterweight, and a bucket. But to you, it might as well be a siege engine. You've seen others use them further down the bank, a slow, rhythmic creaking and splashing that is the soundtrack of this twilight shift. It looks simple. You are about to learn it is anything but. Historians still argue whether the shaduf was an indigenous invention in Mesopotamia or a technology that migrated from elsewhere. But sitting here, you don't care about its pedigree. You only care about its function. The one before you is a testament to hasty repair. The horizontal beam is lashed to the upright fork with strips of damp leather that are tightening as they dry, groaning with the tension. The counterweight, a lump of mud and stones packed into a basket, hangs suspended, looking treacherously uneven. The bucket itself is just an older, more cracked version of your pot, tied to the end of the beam with more of that dubious-looking rope. This is your engine. This is what stands between your fig trees and a slow, desiccated death. You take a deep breath, the air now cooling enough to carry the smell of someone's cooking fire from a distant mud brick dwelling. It's a smell of normality, of home. It feels like a cruel joke. Your home for the next several hours is this 3-square-meter patch of mud and this groaning wooden beast. You step forward, your hand reaching for the smooth-worn wood of the beam. The first shift is about to begin. The geometry of thirst is not a theory. It is a law, as immutable as the sunrise. It was dictated to you yesterday by the overseer, a man with forearms like twisted rope and a permanent squint, as he pointed a calloused finger at your freshly assigned plot. The royal directive, filtered down through a dozen layers of bureaucracy, is simple. These trees must live and bear fruit. The logic of how to achieve that, however, is precise, cold, and mathematical. Your 10 saplings aren't just plopped into the ground, they are stationed. Each shallow, bowl-shaped planting hole is exactly 5 paces from the next, forming a rigid line parallel to the main irrigation canal. The distance isn't arbitrary. It is the calculated reach of a man, specifically, a man exhausted from lifting hundreds of pounds of water, carrying a sloshing, heavy pot. 5 paces is the maximum distance you can reliably stagger without spilling more than a cursed splash on the parched ground. You walk the line now, as the last of the sunset bleeds into violet. You count the steps again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tree. A skinny whip of a fig, its few leaves already curled defensively against the coming night. Another 5 paces. Another tree. This one looks slightly more robust, or maybe you're just projecting hope onto it. This spacing accomplishes 2 brutal truths of Assyrian horticulture. First, it minimizes competition. The roots of these infant trees, if they ever manage to stretch beyond their own immediate soak zone, won't immediately strangle each other in a subterranean battle for moisture. Second, and more crucially, it defines the entire architecture of your labor. Your world is no longer measured in acres or fields, but in a series of grim triangles. The points of the first triangle are the shaduf at the canal bank, the first tree in your line, and the second tree. Your day will be a relentless pilgrimage between these points, tracing and retracing these angles until your vision blurs. The planting holes themselves are works of subtle art. They are not just dug, they are sculpted. Each is a shallow, wide-mouthed depression, its edges raised slightly into a low, circular berm of packed earth. This is your containment field. When you finally pour your precious water into this space, that little berm acts as a dam, holding the liquid around the base of the sapling, forcing it to seep down to the roots rather than running off uselessly across the hard-baked surface. It's a tiny moat for a tree citadel under siege. You run your foot along the berm of the first tree, smoothing a section that has crumbled. This, too, is part of the maintenance. The geometry must be maintained, or the water, and your effort, wastes itself. But the geometry extends beyond your immediate plot. You look down the long, straight line of the main canal. Other shadufs, other gardeners, other lines of trees recede into the gathering dusk. It's a grid. The canal is the central artery. From it, smaller feeder ditches, which you will soon be intimately acquainted with, branch off at right angles. The tree lines are parallel to these ditches. From above, it must look like a vast, orderly ledger, or accounting sheet of life and future revenue scratched onto the face of the earth. Every tree is an entry. Your success or failure is a column to be tallied. This systematic, grid-based agriculture is a hallmark of large-scale Mesopotamian farming, a testament to a centralized administration that thought in terms of quotas and yields, not individual leaves. You are a living cursor, moving along a line in that grand, terrestrial spreadsheet. And now, the weight of that system lands squarely in your hands, or more accurately, on your lower back. You return to the shadaf. The counterweight hangs, a silent challenge. The lesser-known, slightly amusing detail here is the counterweight itself. It's not a standardized block of stone. It's a haphazard collection of whatever was heavy and available. Broken bits of old pottery, stones from the field, lumps of sun-dried clay, all packed into a basket and sealed with more mud. It's inelegant, lopsided, and absolutely functional. Every gardener's counterweight is a unique museum of local debris. Yours has a distinctive, chipped fragment of a once-painted brick protruding from one side. Maybe it was part of someone's house, once. Now it's ballast. There's a strange democracy in that. You grasp the rope attached to the bucket. To fill it, you must pull down, hard, dunking the bucket into the canal. This requires overcoming the inertia of the counterweight on the other end of the beam. You lean back, putting your full weight into it. The beam groans, the leather lashings creak, and the counterweight rises, jerkily, into the air. The bucket splashes into the murky water. You let the rope go slack, and the magic of physics, the very principle the overseer would never name but understood perfectly, takes over. The heavier counterweight now plummets, and the bucket, full of water, rises from the canal as if by invisible hand. It's a beautiful, elegant transfer of force. It's also brutally hard work. The bucket rises too fast, swinging wildly, shedding a precious arc of water back into the canal. You lunge to grab it, to steady it, your muscles protesting. This is the geometry of thirst in motion, a violent, wet pendulum, and you are its desperate, human governor. The wooden beast has a rhythm, and it is trying to break you. Your first encounter with the shadaf was one of intellectual appreciation, a clever use of leverage, a simple machine. Now, after what feels like 1,000 lifts, you understand its true nature. It is a device designed to convert human effort into vertical gain, one agonizing bucket at a time. Its anatomy is burned into your senses. The coarse grain of the main upright pole, worn smooth where generations of shoulders have leaned against it. The deep, aching groan of the horizontal beam as it pivots on its crude axle. The wet slap of the rope in your palms. The particular sound of the clay bucket kissing the surface of the canal, a gulping glug that mocks your thirst. You have settled into a punishing cycle. Pull down to submerge the bucket. Wait a heartbeat for it to fill. Release the rope and let the counterweight do its work, but not too much. You must arrest the bucket's ascent before it flies past you and dumps its contents. Swing the dripping bucket inwards over the bank. Grab its belly, the cold seep of water instantly soaking into your tunic. Detach it from the rope with clumsy, wet fingers. This is the moment of truth. The transfer. Heaving the full bucket off the hook, you place it on the ground and in one, theoretically, fluid motion, seize your own watering pot, plunge it into the bucket, and fill it to the brim. Water slops over the rim, darkening the dust at your feet. Every lost drop feels like a tiny personal failure. Then you turn, pot cradled against your hip, and begin the 5-pace march to the first tree. The physics are unforgiving. The counterweight is supposed to make the lift easier, and it does, but only in comparison to hauling a full bucket straight up by muscle alone. The real strain is cumulative. It's in the constant, twisting pull of your lower back as you heave the beam down. It's in the jarring shock that travels up your arms when you stop the bucket's wild swing. It's in the burning in your thighs as you squat to place the full bucket down, then rise again with your own pot. Your body is learning a new, brutal language, and every verb is a complaint. You develop a relationship with the water itself. It's not clear. It's a silty, tan liquid, carrying within it the fine, fertile loam of the Tigris plains. When you pour it into the porous clay of your watering pot, you can hear a subtle change in sound, a hollow gurgle that slowly deepens as the pot's walls drink their own share. That's the first secret of the clay pot. It sweats. In the dry air, moisture will seep through its very body, cooling the water inside by evaporation. It's a primitive but effective evaporative cooler, a fact you appreciate not for its cleverness, but for the slightly less tepid drink you'll sneak later. For now, you ignore the promise of a cool sip. You have a tree to feed. The march to the first fig sapling is a study in focused tension. Your eyes are locked on the lip of the pot. Your body moves with a stiff, careful gait, like a priest carrying a sacred vessel. Which, in a way, you are. The sloshing is the enemy. A full, violent slosh can waste a mouthful of water. You learn to move with the water's rhythm, letting the sway of your hips counteract the surge in the pot. It's a ridiculous, subtle dance. You reach the planting hole, its little berm waiting like an open mouth. You don't just dump the water. You kneel, a fresh ache in your knees, and tilt the pot slowly, pouring in a steady, thick stream directly at the base of the sapling's stem. The sound is a deep, satisfying gluggle as the thirsty earth instantly swallows it. You watch the dark stains spread, but only so far. The geometry holds. The water pools within the berm, a perfect, temporary little lake for your tree. Then, it's back. The empty pot feels treacherously light, a lie that makes your return steps too quick, too jarring. You arrive back at the shadaf, and the full bucket is there, waiting. The counterweight hangs in the air, patient and heavy. The cycle resets. Pull. Wait. Release. Grab. Transfer. Fill. Turn. Walk. Pull. Return. It's a loop without an end, a wheel you are powering with your own spine. The humor is dark and deeply personal. You find yourself cursing the inventor of the shadaf, not by name, but by profession. You imagine him as a pampered royal engineer, sketching elegant lines on a papyrus in a shaded room, never once having to feel the hot rope burn into the blisters now rising on your palms. Historians still argue whether the shadaf's design was perfected in Egypt or Mesopotamia, but you have a new, blister-based theory. It was invented by someone who hated gardeners. The blisters on your palms have bossed and reformed into patches of leathery, angry skin. This is not an injury, it is an adaptation. Your body is being rewritten by the work, the muscle memory of lift and swing etching itself into your tendons and bones. The rhythm is no longer a series of conscious commands but a grinding, autonomic procession. Your mind, freed from the need to micromanage every groan of timber and splash of water, drifts into a strange, hollow state. You are not thinking of the empire, or the king, or even the fruit these trees might one day bear. You are counting. Not trees, not steps, but lifts. You have segmented the twilight into units of 10. 10 full buckets equals 1 circuit for all 10 trees. 1 circuit is a minor victory, a completed lap in this absurd, muddy marathon. The swing of the bucket has become an extension of your own arm. You've learned the precise moment to lean into the pull, adding just enough body weight to overcome the counterweight's stubborn hold without throwing yourself off balance. You've learned to guide the bucket's ascent with a gentle tug on the rope, taming its arc so it swings directly to you, not past you. The transfer from hook to ground, from bucket to your pot, is now a single, graceless but efficient motion. There is no beauty in it, only a raw economy of movement. Every unnecessary flex, every stumble, is a tax paid in precious energy you do not have. You move like a machine that is slowly rusting in the damp air. Your back is a single, solid ache, a constant low note beneath the sharper symphony of complaints from your shoulders and legs. You discover muscles you never knew existed, each announcing its presence with a dull throb of betrayal. The act of straightening up after pouring water at a tree becomes a conscious, two-stage operation. First the push with the legs, then the careful, tentative uncurling of the spine. You find yourself standing by the canal for a moment, not resting, but simply assessing the topography of your own pain, mapping the new mountain range of discomfort that has risen in your body. The mind's drift in this state is dangerous. It opens a door for boredom, and boredom is a luxury you cannot afford. A moment's inattention means a spilled bucket, a misstep into the irrigation ditch, a poorly aimed pour that wastes water outside the berm. So you force your mind to engage with the tiny universe of your plot. You start to know your trees as individuals. Number 3, the fifth tree in your line, is a fighter. It took a full pot 2 days ago and perked up visibly, its leaves seeming less grey by the next evening. Number 7, however, is a diva. It droops no matter how carefully you water it, as if protesting the very dust in the air. You give it a slightly larger pour, a secret favoritism born of sheer stubbornness. You will not let number 7 die. This personalization of the task is your psyche's defense mechanism. It transforms the monolithic chore of watering into 10 tiny, interconnected stories of survival. You are no longer just a laborer. You are the guardian of 10 foolish fig trees who chose to grow in Assyria. It's a pathetic, grandiose narrative, but it gets you through the next set of 10 lifts. The lesser-known detail that fuels this mindset is the nature of the saplings themselves. They aren't grown from seed here. That would take too long. They are likely cuttings, taken from established trees and nurtured in some central nursery before being transplanted to your plot. They are clones, in a sense, but each has responded differently to the trauma of relocation. Number 7 probably had a rougher journey, or its roots were damaged. You are nursing it through its convalescence, a tree physician with a clay pot for a tool. The light is fading from purple to deep blue. The first stars are pricking through the vast velvet of the sky. Your world has shrunk to the circle of sensation immediately around you. The smell of wet mud and your own souring sweat, the feel of the gritty rope, the cool touch of the water on your hands, the distant, lonely cry of a bird. The vast imperial grid you contemplated earlier is gone. There is only this shadaf, this water, this line of trees. You complete another circuit, and then another. Your count climbs. The rhythm is everything. Lift, swing, transfer, walk, pull, return. It is a meditation of pure, physical necessity. Your body is no longer your own. It is a tool, a living part of the shadaf mechanism, a biological component in an irrigation system. And as you finally, blessedly, empty the last bucket of your shift onto number 10, you realize with a jolt that the muscle memory is set. Tomorrow, you will not have to learn. You will only have to endure. The main canal is a distant sovereign. Its water is for lifting, not for direct service. The final journey of that water, from your filled bucket at the bank to the base of your trees, is governed by a smaller, more intricate world, the network of ditches. Once you've filled your own pot, you don't just tramp directly across the raw earth. That would be chaos, and more importantly, it would compact the soil and create pathways for precious moisture to evaporate. Instead, you step into a shallow, hand-cut channel that runs from your shadaf station directly along the line of your trees. This is your personal aqueduct, a vein you have carved into the earth's skin. Maintaining this ditch is a daily ritual almost as sacred as the watering itself. Each morning, before the heat becomes unbearable, you take a worn wooden hoe, its head polished smooth by use, and you walk the ditch's length. You are not digging it deeper, you are sculpting it. Silt from the canal water settles in its bed overnight. Tiny collapses from the walls clutter the path. Your job is to clear this debris, to re-establish the smooth, gently sloping flow that will carry any overflow or spilled water away efficiently. You also reinforce the sides, patting the earth firm with the flat of your hoe. It's tedious, dusty work, and it feels like a prelude to the main event. But you've already learned that a clogged ditch can lead to a minor disaster. A spill from your pot that can't drain away will create a mud pit exactly where you need to stand, turning your next trip into a slippery farce. This network is hierarchical. Your small, private ditch feeds into a slightly larger communal feeder ditch that runs perpendicular to the main canal, servicing a row of gardeners like you. That feeder ditch, in turn, was dug by a work crew under the overseer's direction, a calculated offshoot of the imperial water system. It's a fractal pattern of thirst, branching from the mighty Tigris River down to the single root hair of your most pathetic fig sapling. You are responsible for your capillary. The overseer is responsible for the artery. Historians still argue whether this meticulous level of decentralized maintenance was managed through strict codified law or simply through the ingrained, traditional knowledge passed from one weathered gardener to the next. But the result is the same. A living system that requires constant, humble intervention. The surprising detail here is what lives in these ditches. They are not sterile canals. They are ecosystems. As you clean, you see tiny, translucent shrimp flickering in the leftover puddles. Water beetles skate across the surface. Mosquito larvae wriggle lazily. The ditches are breeding grounds for life, both welcome and unwelcome. You've learned to watch for a particular type of green, filamentous algae that can form a slimy mat, slowing the water's flow. You scrape it out with your fingers, grimacing at the cold, slippery feel of it. This algae, you've heard other gardeners grumble, is a sign of water that is too stagnant, too slow. It's a mark of shame, implying you're not moving enough water through your plot to keep things fresh. So you scrape diligently, your ditch's cleanliness a point of quiet, absurd pride. The geometry of thirst now has a third dimension, depth. The slope of your ditch must be precise. Too steep, and water races through, eroding the sides and not soaking into the adjacent ground where tree roots might benefit from the proximity. Too shallow, and it becomes a stagnant, mosquito-ridden series of puddles. You've become an instinctive surveyor, judging the fall of the land with your eyes and the flow of a test splash of water from your pot. You adjust the grade with your hoe, a shovelful of earth here, a pat down there. It's a dialogue with the land, a negotiation of gravity and absorption. Your ditch is not just a conduit, it is a tool for distribution and a barrier against waste. When you finally pour your water at the tree, any excess that escapes the berm will trickle back into this ditch, and be carried along to perhaps lend a hint of dampness to the soil near the next tree's outer roots. Nothing is supposed to be truly lost. By the time you begin your evening watering shift, the ditch is clear, its course true. Now, as you walk the 5 paces from shadow to tree, you walk beside it, your sandals on the firm packed earth between the ditch and the tree line. Your path is worn bare, a testament to your daily pilgrimage. The ditch is your silent, muddy companion, a tangible record of your labor carved into the very earth. It will vanish after a hard rain or a season of neglect, but for now, it is the visible proof that you are here, that you are imposing order, one careful, watery scoop at a time, on the relentless disorder of the desert's edge. The clay pot is your companion, your tool, and your betrayer. It seems simple, a vessel to hold water. But you've come to understand it as a piece of subtle technology, a product of millennia of trial and error in a land where water is more precious than copper. The pot you cradle against your hip, its rounded belly cool against your skin, is not an accident of form. Its wide base provides stability. A narrow-necked pot would tip over with every slosh on your uneven march. The belly is rounded to distribute the weight, to fit against the curve of your body, to be cradled, not carried like a basket. The rim is thick and rolled, not just for strength, but to provide a good grip for your wet, tired hands. But the true artistry is in the material itself. It is unglazed, fired hard but left porous. This porosity is the secret. As you walk, a tiny amount of water seeps through the clay walls. In the dry air, this moisture evaporates instantly, and the physics of evaporation draw heat away from the water inside. It's a passive cooling system. The water you pour on your last tree is marginally cooler than the water you drew from the canal. It's a small mercy, but in this place, you cling to small mercies. You've also noticed the pot gains weight through your shift. It's not your imagination. The porous clay absorbs some of the silty water. By the end of the night, the pot itself is heavier, waterlogged. Letting it dry in the sun each day is a crucial part of its maintenance. A constantly damp pot would become brittle and crack, and then you'd have to explain that loss to the overseer, a conversation you dread more than back pain. There is decoration, but it's not for beauty. Scratched into the leather-hard clay before firing are symbols. Your pot has a series of wavy lines near the base, a common charm for water, an invocation to Enki, the god of fresh water and mischief. Another gardener's pot might have a crude depiction of a tree. These aren't factory markings. They are pleas, protective sigils etched by the potter or the first gardener who used it. You find yourself, in your mindless counting, sometimes tracing those wavy lines with your thumb. It feels foolish, but you don't stop. You need every advantage you can get, divine or otherwise. The surprising historical detail here is what these pots sometimes contained before they held water. While yours is a dedicated watering pot, archaeologists have found that in household contexts, pots of similar design were used for everything from storing grain to brewing beer. The standardization is about utility, not specialization. A good, porous clay pot was a multi-purpose life container. The very fact that you have a pot dedicated solely to this one task is a mark of the operation's scale and organization. It is a tool issued for a purpose, not a household item pressed into service. This is industrial-grade hydration. You also learn the pot limitations. It has a capacity that seems designed to mock human strength. It holds enough to give one tree a decent drink, but not enough to truly saturate the soil. This means multiple trips per tree per season, a built-in inefficiency that guarantees job security for gardeners. You can't water deeply once a week. You must water shallowly, constantly, training the tree's roots to stay near the surface where your labor can reach them. It's a codependence engineered in clay and mud. The tree is tethered to your daily routine as surely as if it were leashed. And then there is the pot's betrayal. It breaks. Not often, but it happens. A slip on the ditch sedge, an awkward swing against the shaduf's beam, and the pot, dried out from the day's sun and stressed from the temperature change, can crack with a sound like a snapping bone. It's a heart-stopping noise. One moment you have a heavy, sloshing weight in your hands, the next you have shards of pottery and a dark stain spreading in the dust between you and your target tree. The water is gone, instantly absorbed by the greedy earth. The pot is gone. The walk back to the shaduf is a walk of shame. You'll have to borrow a spare from the overseer's linta, and the broken pieces will be noted. Pots are inventory. They are counted. Your clumsiness is now a quantitative fact, a deficit in the ledger. You learn to move with a new, heightened caution, treating the pot not as a tool, but as a fragile, water-filled egg. Its value is not in its clay, but in the effort it represents. The lifts, the swings, the walks, all contained within its curved walls, all lost in a single, stupid moment of gravitational disagreement. The daily circuit is a marathon with a moving finish line. You don't run it, you slog it, a slow, damp trudge measured not in distance but in repetitions. Each tree requires not one, but 3 of your full pots to receive what the overseer deems a minimum sustainment. This fact, delivered with the same tone one might use to state the color of the sky, redefines your reality. One circuit of 10 trees is now 30 pots. 30 fills, 30 transfers, 30 careful walks, 30 slow pours. The math is despair, made liquid. You develop a system. It's the only way to keep the vast, empty expanse of the task from crushing you. You water in a strict rotation, but not in simple order. You start with tree 1, give it its first pot. Then, instead of going to tree 2, you walk back to the shadaf, fill again, and take that pot to tree 6, halfway down the line. Then back, fill, and on to tree 2. Then tree 7. You are weaving a pattern, a staggered schedule of hydration. The logic, explained by a grizzled gardener who saw you about to drown yourself in the canal from sheer monotony, is about time. It allows the water from the first pot at each tree to begin soaking in before the second arrives, preventing wasteful runoff. It also, though he didn't say it, saves your sanity. The change of scenery, the different sight lines, the tiny variation in the walk, these are mental life rafts. Your world becomes a series of tiny, critical observations. You watch the soil as you pour. Does it drink the water instantly, with a hissing gasp? That means it's too dry, and the tree is in trouble. Does the water pool on the surface, taking its time to sink? That's better. It means there's some residual moisture. You learn the individual thirst signatures of your trees. Number 3, the fighter, drinks steadily. Number 7, the diva, seems to push the first pot away, the water beading on the surface before reluctantly seeping in. You give it a softer pour, almost a drizzle, and that seems to help. This is the art within the science, reading the land's minute feedback. The act of pouring itself becomes ritualistic. You don't just append the pot. You kneel, the dust imprinting on your knees. You hold the pot close to the ground, tilting it just so, letting the water spill out in a thick, cohesive rope that lands with a soft thud directly on the critical root zone. A pour from height splashes, aerates the water, wasting it to evaporation, and disturbs the soil. A low, gentle pour is an act of reverence. You are not watering dirt, you are feeding a living thing. You find yourself whispering nonsense to the trees as you work. There you go, 3. Come on, 7, drink up. It's not that you think they can hear you. It's that the silence, broken only by the groan of wood and the splash of water, is too vast to bear alone. Your voice, even a whisper, stakes a claim to a tiny corner of it. Historians still argue whether the average Mesopotamian gardener had a concept of duty to the state, or was motivated purely by fear of punishment or desire for his own small share of the yield. But as you perform this daily, silent liturgy of lift and pour, you begin to understand a third option. The work itself becomes the purpose. The completion of the circuit is the day's meaning. The survival of the trees is the proof of your competence, your tiny sliver of control in a world ruled by distant kings and capricious gods. The widely accepted historical fact is that this agricultural system fed cities of tens of thousands, but from down here in the dirt, that fact is abstract to the point of meaninglessness. Your empire is 10 trees. Your civilization is this one, well-maintained ditch. Your legacy, for today, is the dark, damp circle at the base of each fig sapling, slowly fading from view as the night steals the color from the world. As the final pot of the night empties onto number 10, a profound, hollow exhaustion settles over you. It's not just fatigue. It's the void left by the completed task. You stand for a moment, listening. The shaduf is still. The pots are empty. The ditch gurgles softly with the last runoff. The trees are as watered as they will be. You have held the desert at bay for one more day. The victory is microscopic, temporary, and utterly yours. You wipe your muddy hands on your tunic, a futile gesture, and look up at the stars, now blazing in the black sky. They are cold and indifferent. But the earth beneath your feet, at least in 10 small spots, is dark and damp. For now, that is enough. The sun is not your friend. It is a god in its own right, a deity of relentless, devouring fire, and your true opponent in this silent war of irrigation. You've learned to dread the hours between the late morning and late afternoon, the time when your watering work is done but your duty to your trees is not. This is when you battle the unseen enemy, evaporation. The water you poured so carefully last night is not safe. It is a fugitive, constantly trying to escape back into the parched sky. You see its work everywhere. By mid-morning, the dark, rich damp circles around your trees have shrunk, their edges retreating, the color fading to a dull brown. The very surface of the soil in the planting bowls begins to pale, then crack into a fine, hexagonal mosaic of despair. This is the work of the noon demon, as the older gardeners call it, not a literal spirit, but the personification of that shimmering, blinding heat that rises from the earth and steals your labor molecule by molecule. Your job now is to be a guardian of humidity, a fighter of vapor. Your first line of defense is mulch, though they don't call it that. You scour the area around your plot for any organic debris. Dry reeds from the canal bank, fallen leaves, a pathetic few, even the coarse stalks of weeds you've pulled. You gather this brittle, sparse material and carefully arrange it in a thin layer over the damp soil in each tree's berm. It looks pitiful, like putting a single threadbare blanket over a shivering person, but it works. The mulch breaks the direct impact of the sun's rays on the soil, creating a microlayer of slightly cooler, slightly stiller air. It's a barricade against the wind, which is just the sun's accomplice, sent to whisk the moistened air away. You pat it down, willing it to stay put. The surprising, slightly amusing detail in this battle is the use of broken pottery. Every gardener has a small pile of shattered pot shards, the casualties of the trade. These aren't thrown away. You take the larger, curved fragments and press them, concave side down, into the soil at the very base of the tree's trunk. They act as miniature umbrellas, casting a coin-sized shadow over the most critical junction where stem meets root. They also slow the evaporation from that specific spot and, as a hidden benefit, can deter some types of crawling insects that might nibble the tender bark. Your trees end up looking like they're wearing ceramic collars, a strange, functional jewelry. Your own body is a battlefield in this war. The sun's assault on you is direct and brutal. You've adopted the local uniform, a long, loose linen tunic that covers your arms and legs, and a headscarf wound tightly to shield your neck and ears. You smear a paste of wet clay and ash on the exposed skin of your face and forearms. It dries into a cracked, gray mask. It's uncomfortable and it itches, but it's better than the blistering, peeling alternative. You look like a phantom of the field, a mudman tending to his mud-circled trees. The widely accepted historical fact is that Mesopotamians understood the dangers of sun exposure and developed various forms of protection, from clothing to pastes. Your face, caked in drying muck, is a living testament to that ancient dermatological science. You also learn to exploit the shadows. The shaduf's upright pole casts a thin, rotating sliver of shade. You move your one allowed drinking pot, a smaller, personal version of your watering pot, into that sliver, letting the evaporative cooling work for you. Your break, a scant few minutes, is taken squatting in whatever narrow strip of shadow you can find, often cast by the berm of a tree itself. You become a creature of the margins, inhabiting the slim geometries of darkness in a world of overwhelming light. Historians still argue whether the intense, water-conscious practices of Assyrian gardeners were born from environmental necessity alone or were also influenced by religious beliefs that saw water as a sacred, finite gift from the gods that must not be disrespected through waste. As you carefully place a pot shard over a damp spot, you're not thinking of theology. You're thinking of the lift you won't have to do tomorrow if this water stays put. It's a practical piety. Every molecule you save from the noon demon is a molecule you don't have to haul up from the canal with your screaming back. In the end, your motivation is beautifully, brutally simple. You are fighting the sun to save your own future labor. The rhythm breaks. It's not a gradual change, it's a sudden, chilling silence. You arrive at the canal at your usual time, the habitual ache in your shoulders a familiar companion, and you see it immediately. The water level has dropped. Not by a little. By a hand's breadth, maybe more. The sluggish current is gone. The canal is now a series of connected, stagnant pools, the exposed banks glistening with wet mud that is already cracking in the morning sun. A low murmur of anxiety runs through the other gardeners gathered along the bank, a sound more frightening than any shout. This is the crisis you've heard whispered about, when the canal runs low. The reason is upstream, far beyond your sight or influence. Perhaps there wasn't enough snowmelt in the northern mountains. Perhaps a district governor has ordered a sluice gate closed to fill his own reservoirs, hoarding water for his province's fields. The politics of water are a game played by men on terraces, but the consequences land here, in your dry ditch and the parched throats of your trees. The overseer arrives, his face grim. No explanations are given. Orders are. Rationing begins. Your allotment is cut. Drastically. Where you were to give each tree 3 pots, you are now to give 2. But it's worse than that. The lowered water level means your shut-off bucket no longer submerges fully. You have to lean out precariously, pulling the beam down further, your feet slipping in the mud, to get a partial fill. Each lift yields less water. The counterweight, calibrated for a full bucket, now overcompensates, making the bucket jerk upwards violently, spilling even more. The efficiency of your entire system collapses. What used to take 30 lifts now might take 4 to 5 to move the same volume, except you're not allowed to move that volume. You are required to move less, with greater effort. This is when gardening becomes triage. You can no longer afford the luxury of treating all 10 trees equally. You must assess who lives and who struggles. You walk your line in the harsh morning light, not as a caretaker, but as a field surgeon. Number 3, the fighter, looks relatively robust. Its leaves, while dusty, still have a hint of leathery vitality. Number 7, the perennial weakling, is already flagging, its leaves curling into tight, defensive scrolls. The others are in various states of distress. The widely accepted historical fact is that Mesopotamian agriculture was precariously dependent on consistent irrigation, and disruptions could lead to localized famine. You are now living that fact in microcosm. Your 10-tree famine will be measured in dead saplings and a reduced yield, but the principle is the same. You make your grim calculations. You decide to give your full 2-pot ration to numbers 1, 3, 5, 8, and 10. They are the strongest. The remaining 5, including poor number 7, will get 1 pot. You are not choosing which trees to kill, you are choosing which have the best chance to survive on less, thereby saving the plot's overall productivity. It's a brutal, logical calculus that sits in your stomach like a stone. When you give number 7 its single, pathetic pot, you pour it with a kind of apology in your movements. The tree seems to drink it instantly, leaving no trace. It feels like feeding a dying man a single grain of wheat. The surprising detail here is the community response. Gossip and casual complaints cease. A tense, focused solidarity emerges. Gardeners down the line share information in terse sentences. My bucket only fills halfway. The silt is clogging my ditch. The overseer says it may last 5 days. You learn tricks from the old-timers. One shows you how to dig a small sump hole in the canal bed directly under your shadaf, a deeper pocket to give your bucket a chance at a better fill. Another offers a handful of coarse barley grains to toss into your watering pot. Slows the pour, he grunts. Makes it soak better. It's a tiny hack, a way to make each drop linger in the root zone a moment longer. You take the grains without a word. Gratitude, in this moment, is also a rationed commodity. Historians still argue whether water rationing in times of shortage was governed by written law or the discretionary, often unfair, judgment of local overseers and canal officials. As you look at the grim face of your overseer, you suspect the latter. His favor could mean an extra bucket of allowance for your row. You catch yourself thinking this, and hate the thought. Your world has shrunk again, past empire, past routine, past even the simple geometry of your plot. It has shrunk to the few inches of water clinging to the bottom of a bucket, and the desperate, silent bargaining you do to get just one more inch for number 7. Water is life, but it is not enough. You discover this as the rationing continues and your trees, even the strong ones, begin to look pale and listless, their growth stunted. They are drinking, but they are not dining. The soil here is exhausted, leached of its goodness by centuries of cultivation and relentless sun. To bear the fruit the empire expects, they need more than just HO, they need nutrients. This is where you graduate from water bearer to mixologist, and your pantry is a catalogue of foul-smelling things. Enter the gardener's pantry, fertilizers from fish and dung. Once a week, a new duty is added to your circuit. You are given access to the communal fertilizer pit, a sunken area at the edge of the fields that smells like a physical blow. Here, the waste products of the empire's other life are collected and partially broken down. There are crumbled piles of dry, straw-mixed cattle and donkey manure. There are baskets of powdery, crushed bone, from meals, from sacrifices, from the natural attrition of livestock. And then there are the fish. This is the lesser-known, slightly amusing detail that never fails to make your eyes water. Periodically, a cart arrives from the river or the palace kitchens laden with fish offal, heads, guts, scales, and small, unusable whole fish that have begun their journey to the afterlife. This gory cargo is dumped into a specific section of the pit. Your job is to take a specified measure of this reeking, fly-blown mixture and combine it with manure, ash from cooking fires, and a portion of the silty mud from the canal bank. You mix it with a stout stick in a large, battered pot, adding just enough water to create a thick, horrific slurry. The smell is indescribable. It clings to your tunic, your skin, your hair. You become known by your aroma as much as by your face. The science, though you'd never call it that, is sound. The manure and fish provide nitrogen, the bones provide phosphorus, the ash adds potassium and helps balance the soil's chemistry. You are essentially making a primitive, holistic fertilizer soup. The widely accepted historical fact is that Mesopotamian farmers practiced soil amendment with manure and other organic materials as early as the 3rd millennium BCE. You are a living link in that ancient chain of agricultural empiricism, holding your nose while advancing the cause of botany. Application is a delicate, nose-pinching art. For each tree, you dig a shallow, circular trench around the base, just outside the drip line of the leaves, where the feeder roots are likely searching. Into this trench, you carefully pour a cup of your odious concoction. Then you immediately cover it with the excavated soil, sealing in the smell and the nutrients, letting them break down slowly and feed the roots. It's a burial ritual for garbage that promises resurrection for your trees. You learn to do this in the cool of the evening, after watering, so the moisture helps carry the nutrients down. Doing it in the sun would be a special kind of olfactory torture. The effect is not immediate, but over the weeks, you see it. The trees that receive the treatment, you still can't afford to give it to all of them. Number 7 again misses out. Develop a slightly deeper green hue. Their leaves seem broader, more resilient to the dust. A few even dare to put out tiny, hard nodules that might become figures. The fertilizer is hope, distilled into a stench. You develop a perverse pride in your slurry. Your mix is thicker than the gardeners next to you. You swirl it with a confident grimace. You have become a connoisseur of decay. Historians still argue whether the use of specific fertilizers like fish was driven by observed results or was intertwined with symbolic practices, the life force of the river, fish, being given to the life force of the land, trees. As you pour the glistening, eye-watering fish guts into your mixing pot, symbolism is the last thing on your mind. You're thinking about the flies, and whether this batch will be too hot and burn the roots if you don't dilute it enough. Your relationship with the trees has become visceral, literally grounded in the cycle of consumption and waste. You feed them the leavings of other lives, and in return, they promise a future sweetness. It is a stark, unsentimental bargain, sealed not with a handshake, but with a shovel of dirt over a trench of rotting fish heads. The scribe arrives on a morning when the wind has died, leaving the air preternaturally still and heavy, as if holding its breath. He does not come alone. He is preceded by an assistant carrying a wooden writing board coated with a thin layer of wet clay, and followed by the overseer, whose usual grim demeanor is sharpened into an edge of nervous deference. The scribe himself is a slight man, his hands clean, his linen kilt unstained by mud or manure. He moves with a quiet, deliberate precision, and his eyes, as they sweep over your plot, don't see trees, they see entries. Your world, which has felt so vast in its toil and so intimate in its details, is about to be reduced to notations. The scribe's visit is the cold, administrative shadow of the empire falling directly upon your 10 fig trees. He nods to the overseer, who barks your name. You step forward, your dirty hands clasped awkwardly. You are not expected to speak unless spoken to. You are a source of data, not commentary. The audit begins. The scribe points a thin finger at your first tree. The assistant, stylus poised, looks at you. Condition, the scribe says, his voice dry as papyrus. You stammer, alive. Healthy. The scribe's eyes narrow. He needs quantification. Leaf count estimate. Percentage of canopy showing vigor. Evidence of pest or blight. You haven't thought of your trees in these terms. You look at number 1, really look, seeing it through his eyes. You estimate. More than 50 leaves. Most are vigorous. No blight. The assistant stylus moves in the clay, making tiny, cuneiform impressions. A wedge 4 figure, a combination 4 healthy. A number. Your tree is now a sentence. They move down the line. The process is relentless. For each tree, they assess its height against a marked pole the assistant carries. They examine the soil in the berm, probing its moisture with a clean stick. They note the presence of your mulch and your pathetic potsherd collars, which the scribe records not as clever adaptations, but as applied ground cover, type, ceramic fragment. Your ingenuity is catalogued as inventory. When they reach number 7, you feel a pang of irrational guilt, as if its poor performance is a personal failing you must now account for. Stunted, you say quietly, before the scribe can ask. Leaf curl. Slow drinker. The scribe peers at it, then nods curtly. The assistant stylus moves, and you imagine the symbols for poor yield prospect being etched into the permanent record. Number 7 is now a problem in an equation. The widely accepted historical fact here is the Assyrian Empire's renowned bureaucracy, which maintained meticulous records on everything from grain stores to military conscripts to, as you are witnessing, agricultural outputs. These clay tablets were the hard drive of the empire, allowing for planning, taxation, and accountability across vast distances. You are standing at the very bottom rung of that ladder of information, watching as your sweat is translated into wedges and lines. Then comes the surprise, the lesser-known detail that chills you more than the scrutiny. The scribe turns to the overseer. Water allocation for this plot, current cycle. The overseer recites the reduced number due to the canal's low level. The scribe nods, then looks at your shadaf, your ditch, your pots. Efficiency rating, he states, not to you, but to the overseer. The overseer squints, judging. Adequate. Maintains ditch. No recorded waste. The scribe makes a note. You are being graded. Your efficiency rating might affect your future water allotments, your standing, maybe even your rations. The pressure you felt from the sun and the dry soil now has a new source. A quiet man with a clipboard of clay, reducing your existence to a performance metric. Finally, the scribe asks for your yield estimate. The trees haven't even set proper fruit yet, just hard little nubs. You have to guess. You give a conservative number, a count of potential figs so low it sounds pathetic even to you. The scribe records it without expression. This estimate will become a target. If you exceed it, you might be rewarded with a small bonus of grain or oil. If you fall short, especially without a documented reason like blight or water shortage, it will be noted as underperformance. Your future, and the future of your plot, is now bound to those tiny, hard nubs on the branches. They move on to the next gardener. You are left standing in the sudden silence, the only sound the faint buzzing of flies over your fertilizer pit. The visit lasted less than half an hour, but the feeling it leaves is profound. Your labor has always had purpose, but now it has a file. The intimate, daily struggle with nature has been abstracted into administration. You look at your trees, and for a moment, you don't see living things fighting for survival. You see 10 lines in a ledger, 10 assets in an imperial portfolio. You are their custodian, but the scribe and his stylus are their owners. The weight of that reality is a different kind of ache, one that no amount of stretching can ease. The scribe's dust has settled, the clay tablet has been carried away to dry in some shaded archive, and the unnatural silence of his visit is broken by the first, tentative groan of a shadaf down the line. Work resumes. But something has shifted. The shade, unspoken anxiety of the rationing period and the chilling touch of bureaucracy have forged a brittle camaraderie among you, the gardeners by the canal. You are no longer just isolated figures toiling in parallel universes of date. You are a community bound by blisters, bad smells, and a deep-seated suspicion of anyone with clean hands. Your breaks, those scarce few minutes when the sun is at its peak and the overseer retreats to his lean-to, become your parliament. You gather in whatever sliver of shade you can find, usually under a stunted, wild tamarisk tree that somehow survives at the field's edge. You sit on the ground, passing a single, shared water skin, a personal luxury, not a tool, taking small, careful sips. No one speaks at first. You just sit in the collective exhaustion, the sound of your breathing almost synchronized. Then the gossip starts. It's never about great affairs of state. It's hyperlocal intelligence. Old man Nabu's shadaf beam cracked this morning, someone mutters. Sounded like a thunderclap. He's using a rope and bucket like a peasant until the carpenter comes. A round of sympathetic grunts. You all know the catastrophe of a broken beam. It's a day's work lost, at least. Another gardener, a woman with forearms like knotted rope, reports. The fish cart came to the south pit. It was all carp this time. Stinks different. Sweeter, in a rotten way. Noses wrinkle. You discuss the merits of carp guts versus catfish offal as fertilizer with the earnestness of wine tasters debating vintages. This is where the jokes live. They are dark, dry, and almost exclusively about the work. One gardener, a young man with a permanent squint, mimes the scribe's fastidious note-taking, using a twig as a stylus and the dirt as his tablet. Leaf count, some. Vigor, meh. Gardener's smell, severe. It gets a ripple of laughter, the kind that's more about release than humor. Someone else tells the classic tale of the new gardener who tried to speed up his shadaf by adding rocks to the counterweight, only to have the whole contraption pivot like a catapult and launch the bucket, and his best pot, into the next province. You've all heard it before, but you smile anyway. These stories are your mythology. The surprising historical detail that emerges in these breaks is the gambling. It's not with money, you have little. It's with rations, with favors, with moments of labor. You see two gardeners hunched over a crudely scratched grid in the dirt. They're playing a game called 20 Squares, a Mesopotamian board game of strategy and luck, using bits of pottery and a clay die. The wager? The winner gets the loser's morning ditch cleaning duty for one day. It's a high-stakes bet in your economy of effort. You watch, fascinated, as the fate of one man's extra hour of sleep rests on the roll of a knucklebone die. It's a reminder that even here, at the edge of the empire's machine, the human desire for play, for chance, for a tiny advantage, persists. You share more than stories. You share solutions. The gardener with the gamey carp fertilizer mentions she mixes in extra ash to calm the smell. Another shows you a new way to tie the bucket rope to prevent it from slipping and giving you a brutal rope burn. You, in turn, demonstrate your trick of using barley grains in the watering pot. This knowledge exchange is the real, unrecorded science of Assyrian horticulture, passed not on tablets but in whispers between thirsty, tired people. Historians still argue about the extent of literacy among the common agricultural class, but in this shady spot, it's clear that the most vital information is transmitted orally, through gesture and grunt and shared experience. Then, the moment ends. The overseer emerges from his linta, and the parliament dissolves without a word. You all stand, groaning in unison, a chorus of aching backs and knees. You share a last, weary glance, a look that says, I know, and you know, and we'll all be back here tomorrow. Then you return to your separate plots, to your individual shadafs, to your private wars against the sun. But the memory of the community lingers, a thin thread of solidarity that makes the vast, indifferent scale of the empire feel just slightly less lonely. You are not just a gardener. You are one node in a network of people who understand, precisely, the weight of a full clay pot, the sound of a happy tree drinking, and the unique horror of a scribe's visit. The king's gardens are a rumor-given form, a mirage that occasionally solidifies on the horizon of your awareness. You've heard of them, of course. Everyone has. They are one of the wonders of Nineveh, a mountain of greenery built for a single man's pleasure. But for you, they exist mostly as a taunting contrast, a luxury so distant it feels like a myth. Until today. A rare errand takes you from the flat, geometric grid of the canal-side orchards toward the raised terraces of the palace complex. You are carrying a sealed message from your overseer to a steward in the lower kitchens, something about a promised delivery of dates from last season's yield, a transaction as exciting as watching mud dry. But the route takes you along a high path that skirts the outer walls of the royal precinct. And there, through a decorative lattice of glazed brick, you get your forbidden glimpse. It steals your breath. Not with beauty, though it is beautiful, but with the staggering, obscene scale of its ease. You see tiered terraces, not of date, but of solid stone and baked brick, rising like a green ziggurat. The trees are not pathetic saplings. They are mature, towering date palms and broad-canopied terebinths. Their leaves are lush, deep emerald that seems to vibrate against the pale stone. You see vines heavy with grapes, flowers and explosions of color you didn't know could exist outside of a dream. But it's the water that truly breaks your heart. It is everywhere. It cascades from one terrace to another in artificial waterfalls, a constant, cheerful roar that drowns out the city sounds. It runs in open, stone-lined channels so clean you can see the reflection of the sky. It fills ponds where lotus flowers float, serenely ignorant of rationing. And you see, with a mechanic's eye, the technology. Not a single, groaning shadaf in sight. Instead, you spot the great, ox-driven sakia, a continuous chain of pots on a rotating wheel, lifting water from a deep well or a cistern with a slow, bovine-powered relentlessness that requires no human back. You see Archimedes screws, though you don't know the name, coiled metal tubes within cylinders, turning by crank to lift water effortlessly. This is the widely accepted historical fact of Assyrian engineering prowess made manifest. The legendary hanging gardens, or something like them, were feats of hydraulic luxury, using advanced screw pumps and chain lifts to create a mountain oasis. The lesser-known, gut-punching detail is the army of gardeners. They are everywhere, but they are not like you. They are attendants, not laborious. You watch one. He holds not a heavy, porous pot, but a delicate, long-spouted bronze vessel. He is pouring water, slowly, carefully, onto the roots of a single, perfect rose bush. His movements are graceful, unhurried. He is not fighting evaporation or rationing, he is performing a rite of abundance. Another gardener clips a stray leaf with a pair of polished copper shears. They wear clean, simple tunics. Their hands, you imagine, are calloused from shears, not from rope. They work in the shade of the very trees they tend. The contrast is so violent it feels like a physical blow. You think of your 30 lifts for a drink of silt-laden water. You think of your cracked pot shards and your ditch full of shrimp and your nightly calculus of triage for number 7. You think of the smell of fish guts and the taste of dust. And here, water is a decorative element, a plaything. The king's gardens are not about survival or yield, they are about spectacle and control. They are a statement: I have conquered the aridity itself. I make the desert bloom at my whim, and I employ an entire subclass of people to make that blooming look effortless. Historians still argue whether the fabled hanging gardens were in Nineveh or Babylon, or whether they were largely a poetic exaggeration. But the principle they represent, the extravagant diversion of resources and labor for royal prestige, is undeniably Assyrian. You are seeing a single, breathtaking point on that spectrum. Your plot, with its 10 struggling fig trees, is the other, far end. You are both part of the same agricultural system, one feeding the belly, the other feeding the ego. The moment passes. A guard shifts his stance nearby, and you flinch, lowering your eyes. You clutch the sealed tablet and hurry on your way, the image burned into your mind. The roar of the waterfalls fades, replaced once more by the dry wind and the distant, familiar groan of a shadaf. You return to your plot, to your own tools, to the reality of lift and swing. But now, the work feels different. It feels small. Not unimportant, but provincial. You water number 7 that evening, and the act, once a focused act of survival, now feels like a crude parody of that man with the bronze watering can. You are not a gardener in the way he is a gardener. You are an irrigation technician in the empire's most basic, most brutal factory. And the luxury of the royal garden is not a mirage. It is the destination of the river your labor is painfully, drop by drop, helping to sustain. The promise, however distant and theoretical, was always the fruit. The yield. The tangible result of your blisters, your backache, and your intimate, foul-smelling relationship with 10 fig trees. That promise now swells, slowly and miraculously, on the branches. The hard little nubs you reported to the scribe have softened, expanded, and taken on the distinctive, teardrop shape of young figures. They are green, firm, and absolutely sacred. You watch them with a possessiveness that borders on paranoia. Birds become your sworn enemy. A new, twitchy part of your routine involves scanning the skies and shouting, waving your arms at any winged creature that dares to hover too close. You've even fashioned a crude rattle from a gourd and some pebbles to scare them off when you're not there. The harvest is not a single event, but a careful, drawn-out negotiation with ripeness. Figs do not all mature at once. You must become a master of subtle gradations of color and softness. A fig picked too early is a hard, bitter lump of wasted potential. One left too long splits, attracting every insect in the province and fermenting into a sour, useless mush. So every day, as you make your watering circuit, you now also perform a gentle, tactile inspection. You cradle each developing fig in your palm, applying the faintest pressure with your thumb. You are reading it, like a blind man reading Braille, searching for that perfect give that signals it is ready to leave the branch. The day you pick the first ripe fig from number 3, the fighter, is a quiet, profound moment. It comes away from the stem with a clean, almost silent snap. It sits in your palm, warm from the sun, a deep purple-green, dusted with a faint, powdery bloom. It is the physical manifestation of all those lifts. You don't eat it immediately. You hold it, feeling its weight, its perfect form. Then, you take a small bite. The flavor is astonishing. Sweet, honeyed, with a granular texture from the tiny seeds, and a complexity that speaks of the silt, the fish guts, the ash, and the relentless, careful pause of water. It tastes of work, and it is delicious. This is your bittersweet reward. The sweetness is literal, bursting on your tongue. The bitterness is the knowledge that this fig is not wholly yours. The widely accepted historical fact of the Mesopotamian agricultural system was its reliance on sharecropping or taxation in kind. Your overseer arrives with baskets on the day the main harvest begins. You pick alongside him, filling the baskets with the fruits of your labor. He counts them meticulously, comparing the number to the scribe's earlier estimate. You have exceeded it slightly, thanks to the fighters in your line. A flicker of something, pride, maybe, crosses the overseer's stony face. He sets aside a portion, perhaps 1 basket in 5. This is your share. The rest belongs to the palace, to the temple, to the system that owns the land, the water, and the trees. Your portion is your wage, paid in perishable currency. The surprising, slightly amusing detail is the fate of the imperfect figures. The split ones, the barred-pecked ones, the ones that somehow grew misshapen. These are not thrown away. Nothing is. They are collected in a separate, smaller basket. These will be dried in the sun on woven mats, becoming chewy, sweet bricks of preserved energy for the lean winter months, or they might be mashed and added to the communal beer vats for a touch of extra sugar. Even failure has a use. Number 7, true to its nature, produced only 2 figs, both of them small and somewhat tough. You put them in the to-dry basket without ceremony. Its contribution is meager, but it contributed. That, in itself, feels like a victory. You are left with your basket of perfect figures. You will trade some for grain, for a bit of oil, perhaps for a new leather strap for your sandal. You will give 1 or 2 as a gesture to the other gardeners, solidifying those bonds of shared blisters. You will save a few to dry for yourself. And you will eat one more, right now, savoring it slowly. As you chew, you look at your trees. The harvest has stripped them, leaving them looking oddly naked, vulnerable. Your intense, daily relationship with them is entering a new phase. The frantic, life-giving labor eases. The watering shifts will shorten as the trees go dormant. The ditch will need less maintenance. But the cycle is not over. It is pausing. The taste of the fig is both an ending and a proof of concept. You did it. You took the dust and the water and the filth and you co-authored, with the sun and the tree, this moment of sweetness. It's a tiny, edible monument to your endurance. And as the sticky juice dries on your fingers, you realize that for all the hardship, you will be back next season. The garden, for all its tyranny, has claimed you. The season turns. The fierce, whitish glare of the high summer sun mellows into a golden, slanting light that casts long, gentle shadows from your now familiar shadow. The frantic, twice-daily watering circuits slow to a trickle, then cease altogether. The fig trees, relieved of their fruit, begin to withdraw their energy, their leaves fading from tired green to a palette of ochre and bronze before they finally release their grip and spiral down to join your mulch. Your world, once defined by the urgent logic of thirst and lift, is quieting. The ditch still needs a weekly clearing, but the water flows slowly, without purpose. The fertilizer pit is covered for the season. Your hands, though permanently etched with the map of your labor, no longer crack and bleed with fresh blisters. You have time, now, to feel the deeper, settled aches in your joints, the archives of 1,000 lifts. You stand at the edge of your plot in the late afternoon, not as a laborer in the midst of a task, but as a steward at the end of a campaign. The 10 trees stand in their precise line, dormant, sleeping. They look vulnerable without their leaves, their branches sketching intricate, brittle calligraphy against the pale sky. But you see their strength now, too. The trunks, which were mere whips when you first met them, have thickened slightly. The bark has toughened. They have put on a season's growth, a ring of wood forged from the water you hauled and the foul soup you buried. Number 7 still looks spindly compared to the others, but it is alive. It held on. That, you realize, is the fundamental victory. Not the bounty of the harvest, but the simple, continued existence of life in this hard place. You think of the thousands of others like you, up and down the canal, across the river plains, all now standing in similar quiet plots at the end of their own seasons. Anonymity is your common name. Your individual struggles, with a balky shaduf, a favorite tree, a cracked pot, are lost to history. No scribe will ever inscribe your name on a tablet for saving number 7 with an extra, smuggled cup of water. No song will be sung of your particular calluses. The widely accepted historical fact is that the Assyrian Empire's agricultural might was built on this immense, silent foundation of anonymous, repetitive labor. You are a data point in that fact, a single, unrecorded pulse in the vast, slow heartbeat of the empire's economy. But as you look at your sleeping trees, you understand that the legacy of your blisters is not in a record. It is in the wood, in the root, in the potential for another season's leaves, another season's fruit. It is written in biology, not cuneiform. The lesser-known detail, the one that brings a faint, dry smile to your lips, is the sheer, stubborn mundanity of it all. The great kings boast of conquests on stone steles, of vanquished armies and subdued cities. The engineers are celebrated for their aqueducts and their splendid garden screws. But the empire also ran on a million small, unheroic acts of maintenance. On knowing exactly how to tie a knot so the bucket doesn't swing. On remembering to rotate your watering schedule. On not giving up on the runt of the litter. The real, invisible architecture of civilization is this. The daily, unglamorous decision to show up and pour the water, to clean the ditch, to endure the smell, to care for the thing in your charge. Your legacy is one of stubborn, humble persistence. The wind picks up, cooler now, carrying the smell of distant wood smoke and turned earth. It is a clean smell, scoured of the heavy scents of mud and fermentation. You take one last walk down your line, your feet tracing the path they have worn into dust. You touch the rough bark of number 3, a silent nod to a partner who fought well. You glance at number 7, a wordless pact to try again next year. The work is done for now. The geometry of thirst has been satisfied, the ledger of effort balanced, if only until the spring. Historians still argue about what finally toppled empires like Assyria: climate change, administrative overreach, military overextension. But from here, at the granular level of a single garden plot, you sense that an empire is only as resilient as the willingness of its countless, unnamed gardeners to keep showing up, to keep lifting the water, to keep believing that the effort is worth the meager, sweet reward. As long as the water flows in the canals and someone is there to lift it, the trees live. And as long as the trees live, the city is fed, the palace stands, and the world, for all its chaos, retains this one small, green, meticulously maintained corner of order. You have been that someone. Your tired body is the monument, and these 10 sleeping trees are the inscription. The air is fully cool now, a soft blanket settling over the quiet field. The last sliver of sun dips below the distant wall, painting the sky in washes of violet and deep blue. The sounds of the day, the groan of wood, the splash of water, the chatter of gardeners, have all been tucked away. Only the whisper of the breeze through the bay fig branches remains, a lullaby for the dormant earth. Your plot is at peace. The relentless demand has ceased, leaving behind a profound, earned stillness. You can let your own shoulders loosen, the constant readiness for the next lift finally, truly, easing. The intricate network of ditches, the silent shaduf, the trees dreaming of spring, they are all held in this gentle twilight, complete for now. The immense effort, the 1,000 tiny struggles, they all dissolve into this single, quiet moment of cessation. There is no more to do. No water to carry, no fruit to guard, no tally to meet. There is just the cooling earth, the first stars pricking through the vast dome above, and the deep, satisfying silence of work that is, for a little while, done. You take a final, slow breath, the dust and the sweetness of the season mingling in your senses, and then you turn, your footsteps soft on the path, leaving the garden to its rest, as you finally go to find your own.